Hi, shalom, friends. Have you observed that religious people, not necessarily observant religious Jews only, but religious people, those that firmly have a conviction that there is a creator and that they have a relationship with him, are by and large happier than those that don't espouse that conviction? There are many scientific studies which seem to indicate a correlation of belief in a God that translates in happiness. And of course, as a rabbi in my field, I see it. The stronger the belief system, the easier it is to both discern happiness and to reveal happiness by the person. We might, though, question why. Why is that? Why is a belief in a creator, especially if it's a personal relationship to this creator, why would that assist in a person dealing with the challenges and the stresses of life? There are many answers and many wise thoughts, and I'll share with you one particular perspective. And that is that when you take a look at components of happiness, and I ask you to make a list of what people need or desire to become happy or to be happy, many of them would include good health, respect from peers, adequate income, and so on. Certainly, for the religious person, without even writing down on a piece of paper, very high on the list would be a belief that God is watching over me. Why is that such an important part of happiness? Well, I think you've been in this position before. You're invited to go somewhere, and you say, I don't want to go alone. Who will I know that will be there? No one. You're hesitant to go, so you turn to your spouse or a good friend. You say, come, would you like to go with me? We're going to meet new people. It's a party. It's a this. It's a that. Now, you have to stop and reflect and ask yourself a really basic elementary question. You're going to a place where people are nice, cultured, sophisticated. They're not going to harm you. Why do you need a familiar face? And the answer I think that comes up with is, I'm more comfortable. You see, when you're in a place which is not yours, you feel somewhat adrift, somewhat alone, somewhat vulnerable, and you're very prone to get anxious about this, to be nervous about this. I think we would say that a nervous person, it's difficult to be in a happy state of mind. So when you take a loved one or a friend with you, you have a sense of security. Now that itself becomes a question. Why does that offer security? And perhaps we could, of course, say, well, we're secure with the more familiar, but we keep really going around in circles. Essentially, what I would suggest is, by going with someone that's familiar, it reminds us we are not alone. You see, being alone, which sometimes means being lonely, but actually being alone is unhealthy for a human being who needs to be nurtured. He needs to be in an environment where he feels and he's enveloped by some type of an energy of concern. So even if you were to live alone on a desert island, or alone in an abandoned neighborhood, and you could be secure that no one will hurt you because you're the only one there, on some level, it might be subliminal, you're in a state of high anxiety. What happens if I die? What happens if I fall? What happens if I can't take care of myself? What happens if? You say, well, you'll deal with it or you won't deal with it. And if someone is with you, you think it'll be better? And the answer is yes. When there's someone there, I know I'm not alone. The religious person knows he's never alone. God is always with him. And because God is always with you, and you're always on, not only on God's radar, but at a much deeper level, you're always walking in the presence and in the shadow with the Almighty, how can you truly ever feel nervous? What am I nervous about? I have a divine presence that is with me. King David said it very, very eloquently. He said, even if my father and mother were to forsake me, my God would gather me in. Now, in the Jewish tradition, which we are fortunate to be in, we're given a gift. When someone makes you feel good, when someone reassures you that you're not alone, it's only human nature to try to be nice to that person and to respond. So the person who goes with you to the doctor's office, or your companion in life, whether it be a spouse or a best friend or a close neighbor, who's with you when you need that reassurance, human nature demands that you reciprocate with a smile, with love, with flowers, with a gift, with being there for them. The Almighty, who's always with us, gave us a gift. And he said, you could do something for me as well. You could do what's called in Hebrew a mitzvah. You could do a deed that I want you to do. You can act in a certain way because I'm asking you to do that. And if you do it, it will please me. The gift of being with God gives birth to a second gift, that I could do something on behalf and for the Almighty. Actually, with this thought in mind, we should be deliriously happy. I mean, we have so many opportunities to respond to God's kindness by doing a mitzvah, making a blessing, giving charity, putting on tefillin, keeping kosher, keeping the Shabbat, being honest in business. Every one of these activities is a gift to God. And yet, we don't always feel the joy. So I'm going to close with a story, a very charming story. And if we were to reflect on the story, it will give us an insight both to the joy we should be feeling and why occasionally we don't. Unfortunately, I cannot remember the names of the rabbi or of the young boy, but the story takes place in Jerusalem in the 1930s. The 1930s, there's many Jewish families. All of them are both very similar and dissimilar. They're all similar because they're all poor. They all live in the holy city. They all, to the best of their ability, serve God. And within poverty, there are levels. So we'll call a boy whose name is Shlomo, a typical boy from Jerusalem, a Yerushalmi, an Israeli would call him. And he had all of the attributes of a clever boy, in addition to which he was blessed with a buoyant spirit. He was mischievous, he was charming, he was almost always in a very good mood. And he was pure, he was innocent. There was a Rabbi living in Jerusalem at that time, and the boy Shlomo used to go to his small synagogue called the Shtibel. And they hit off this Rebbe who was maybe in his early 70s and this 9-year-old boy. They actually liked each other. I mean, the Rebbe just was charmed by the kid's innocence and his buoyancy. And he looked at the Rebbe as the wise uncle or grandfather, the holy man that will help him continue. So many times they would study together. The Rebbe would take an interest in what's happening. The Rebbe was wise and understood that the boy wanted to do something for him. So he made him in charge of the third meal of Shabbat. Some of you might know that it's called Shalosh Seudot. There's a third meal eaten on Shabbat. And in this shtibel, this small little shul, they would prepare the table. They would put matzah, beer, a little bit fish, and the Rebbe would teach Torah. Well, who was in charge of setting up the chairs and the table and bringing the matzah? Shlomo. And this was Shlomo's high point, because the whole week he was in yeshiva, didn't have that much time to get adult recognition, but on Shabbat, in the third meal, everyone knew Shlomo's the one that set it up. And the Rebbe would make a special mention to thank Shlomo for setting up the third meal, and it was of mutual benefit. One time, it's late afternoon on Shabbat, Shlomo walks in, very uncharacteristically. He's in a very bad mood. The Rebbe happened to see him and said, Shlomo, what's going on? Where's your usual Good Shabbos smile? Wouldn't respond. He just looked at the ground, kicked the floor a little bit, didn't want to say anything. The Rebbe goes over, puts his arm around the boy. Shlomo, are you okay? And with tears in his eyes, he says, no, I am very upset. And the Rebbe says, with who? He says, with God. Well, this is now a theological issue. The Rebbe hugged him and said, Shabbos is not the time to talk about this, but please, after Shabbos, come into my office and tell me what's on your mind. Anyway, they did the Shalosh Seudos together, and the Rebbe spoke the Torah. Everything was fine. At the end of the Sabbath of the Shabbos, they make the Havdalah, the separation ceremony. The people go over to the Rabbi and wish him a good week. And when everyone leaves, Shlomo goes to the Rabbi in his office, and the Rebbe says, Nu, Shlomo, what's hurting you? And he told him the following. He says, I was walking to shul late afternoon, and I saw something glinting on the street. I walked, and I saw something that was, to me, remarkable. There was a coin. I suppose if you remember the old silver dollars, they were like they were like twice the size of a quarter, and it was made out of silver. Well, in the 1930s, there was, I think, some type of a Turkish currency called a Napoleon, or something to that effect. And it was worth, I don't know, $100. It was valuable. Someone that had that type of a coin could probably buy enough food for a week. Modestly. He said, I saw that coin. And I was thinking to myself, my first thought was, wow, my parents who are struggling, if I brought that home, they would be so happy. And then with a smile, and they would show their gratitude. They would buy me some candy, which for me would be a treat of treats, because we can't afford it. And then I said to myself, what's the use of finding this? It's Shabbos. Shabbos, we don't do business, so I'm not permitted to pick up the coin. And believe me, Rebbe, it was not an easy test. I'm looking at the coin, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I can make an exception, I'll put it into my pants pocket. After the Shabbat, I'll bring it home and I'll say, I found it after Shabbat. They'll never know. But God will know. So I'm looking and staring, and I say to myself, no, I will not break the Shabbat. But I'm not silly. Why should I let it go? So I decided, you know what I would do? I would stand on top of it so no one could see it. And yes, I would look like an idiot for an hour and a half to wait in the same spot. So the sun would set, and when I were to see 3 stars, then the Shabbat is over, and that's when I would pick it up. The alternative was to leave. By that time, after Shabbat, I was quite sure someone else would find it. So that's what I did. I stood on the corner, I put my foot over it, and I was just rocking, looking, observing. People stopped by, some that knew me said, Geshaber Shleima, others just saw a Jerusalem kid, and it was fine. And I was thinking to myself, this is very boring and tiring, but it's worth it. After maybe 40 minutes, an Arab kid came over, bigger and stronger. And he said to him, Yahud, Jewish boy, why are you standing there? I've been looking at you, and I know you haven't moved for the last 20 minutes. Why are you standing there? Says Shleima, I didn't want to tell him anything. What am I going to tell him? That I'm standing here because I'm guarding a Napoleon? So I said, I didn't respond. He says, I'm talking to you. And I said, it's none of your business. It's Shabbat. I'm resting. And he said, sure, That's not true. You must be hiding something. And without waiting, he just hit me, threw me to the ground, and he saw the coin. And he laughed. Oh, so that's what you were hiding. Well, thanks for showing it to me. And he bent down and put it in his pocket. And I got up, and I was so upset with God. I passed the test. I saw the coin. I need the coin. I want the coin. My parents need the coin. They want the coin. But I didn't pick it up because I didn't want to desecrate the Shabbos. And how does God pay me back? He pays me back that I get smacked, I'm thrown to the ground, and someone else took the coin. And he only took the coin because I'm the one that showed it to him. Don't I have a right to be upset? And he began to cry. The Rabbi saw this and thought for a moment. And he said, Shloimeh, you know, you did a tremendous mitzvah. You really did a tremendous mitzvah. You know, I'm jealous of you because I never had that opportunity to keep the Shabbat as you did. I'll tell you what. Watch what I'm going to show you for a minute. And the Rebbe opened up the bottom drawer and he took out a Napoleon. He says, was this the coin? He said, yeah, it was just like that. Said the Rebbe, I would consider it a privilege if I could give you the coin. And he looked at the Rebbe strangely. Why do you want to give me the coin? Just to make me feel better? He says, oh no, I'm a businessman. I'll give you the coin that you lost if you will sell me the mitzvah that you did. That's fair. You're upset because you did a mitzvah and the coin was taken. So I'll give you the coin and I'll take the mitzvah. And suddenly Shloimeh thinks, sell the mitzvah of keeping Shabbos for a Napoleon? And he says, Rabbi, I don't know if I really want to do it. The Rebbe says, why not? It's the same coin. You could buy candy, your parents will be happy. You did such a great mitzvah. I want that mitzvah. Here's the coin, happily. And Shloimeh thinks, he says, no, Rebbe, I'm not going to sell the mitzvah. I'm not selling, not for 10 Napoleons. And that happened, the Rebbe got up and kissed him. Shloimeh left, minus a Napoleon, but happy, proud, uplifted. He did a mitzvah. He did something valuable for the Almighty God as a Jew, which is far more valuable than what he could buy during the week. I love this story. I find it not only charming, but it's a perspective. At the end of the day, did you make a lot of money? Did you meet a lot of people? Did you exercise a lot? Do you feel fulfilled and productive? If you answered yes to all of them, God bless you. I would love to meet you. Others will be honest and say, no, it was a humdrum type of a day, very ordinary. And occasionally you'll meet a person that said, it was horrible, nothing worked. And then you're frustrated, and I say, hold it. Did you put on the phone today? Did you say a prayer? Did you say good morning to your neighbor? Did you smile at a person? Were you honest today? Any one of those things means you did a mitzvah. You did something for God. Your day was incredibly not only productive, but exhilarating. Now, is there any doubt why religious people are happier? So go out, reflect the smile that's inside of you to the outside, and indeed the sun will shine for all. Shalom.